Hello friends, my name is Marines and this is the start of a reading vlog. It is Thursday, December 29th, just after 1 o'clock p.m. I ended my last reading vlog saying that I was going to start this one immediately, but I did have a live show on that night, and I always forget that after the live show we just stay talking and catching up with each other, and we didn't get off until like 11 or so. A little after that, so I just ate something and went straight to bed. And then this morning I decided to take the morning to edit that vlog and upload and otherwise update some content things. So the time is like slipping away from me, and I have 9 books to read between today, Friday, and Saturday to reach my goal of 30. I'm going to present to you a TBR of full-length things that I would like to read, and I'm going to try and read as many of them between today and tomorrow. I am not working, so I just have reading time and really nothing that I have to do. And then depending how far I get here, we'll decide on Saturday what I'm going to do in terms of maybe picking up some shorter things or some graphic novels or whatnot to fill in. Some of these will be books I've mentioned in other reading vlogs that I haven't gotten to yet or haven't finished. So first up, I have 5 books left on my project of reading all of the finalists in the romance category for the Goodreads Choice Awards. I'm reading Reminders of Him, and I'm 40 pages into that, and it is very slow going. I am also currently reading Twisted Hate, and I'm 172 pages into that. I thought it was about halfway through. I think I said that multiple times in my last video, but this is a 512 page contemporary romance. So I'm not halfway through. I'm 34% of the way through. And then I have another Colleen Hoover, It Starts With Us, Every Summer After by Carley Fortune, which I have out from the library as an audiobook, and Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which I own. And I'm saving this one for last, mostly because it won, but also because I think that this will be the one that I actually like out of all of these. I also have to read The Girl Who Soared Over Fairyland and Cut the Moon in Two. The live show for this is until January, so I could technically push it off, but I'm trying to keep pace with 1 book a month, and it is pretty short. I'm doing a read-along for this, and we're dedicating 1 live show to each book that we read. It's me and Kara from Wild Book Garden, so this is the 3rd book. This is the December book, and we'll have the live show to talk about this in January. The Hacienda by Isabel Canas. I've been talking about this one in multiple videos. I just got a video on my FYP this morning where somebody was saying that this was their favorite horror book of the year, or like 2nd favorite, something like that, pretty high up. And I was like, I have to read it. I want to read it. I just keep like pushing it off and off and off. I think this might be what I start today. I also have Jackal, which was part of the book haul that I did in my last video. I keep doing that and throwing things over there. I'm super excited for this one, so it got like bumped pretty far up my TBR. So those are the very wishy-washy plans of a mood reader. 9 books, 3-ish days. Can she do it? Let's go. It took me way longer to finish the Hacienda than I would have liked, but I did finish it. This is book number 22, and I like this. I think that my expectations were really high because I had heard such great things about this, and it has started to pop up on people's best of the year list. So I went in this like really expecting to be blown away, and I don't know that I was quite blown away, but it is very solid as a Gothic horror. This gets compared a lot to Mexican Gothic, and it definitely had the same vibes, especially at the beginning. I think for me, Mexican Gothic has the better description and the better atmosphere. The description, especially at the beginning of Mexican Gothic, of the house and the surroundings and everything, was just so rich and atmospheric. But I think that this has the better plot overall. I was thinking about how like the actual, like, I don't know, the antagonist of this all is pretty much the person that you would expect it to be when you go in. But the thing is that like everybody is bad except for like the workers, right? That are suffering at the hands of like the rich class, and all of them are bad or whatnot. So like there's like everybody is a little bit responsible for the things that happen in this creepy house. So I appreciated that aspect of it as well. I find that a common complaint complaint for me with Gothic horrors is that I find the characters sometimes to be a little bit flat. They've got very static arcs, and that usually isn't a thing that bothers me if we have a true sense of who the character is. But I think with Gothic horrors, you spend so much time in the plot and unraveling the mystery, and also giving characteristics to the setting itself, right? Like a sentient house, for instance, that sometimes it like leeches some of that attention or time from the characters themselves. The two main characters in this, so we get two POV characters, really read a little flat for me. They felt like you could, you know, sub them out for any number of characters and like nothing really would change. But I did like their dynamic, and I did like the sort of like bittersweetness of the end as well. So overall, I would give this 4 out of 5 stars. It is worthy of a read, especially if you like Gothic horror, but I don't know that this was like amazing. It will not end up on my best of the year list. I don't think it will crack the top 10. No, it won't. At a 4-star, this won't crack the top 10. So in order to reach this goal, I basically had to read 3 today, 3 tomorrow, 3 Saturday, more or less, to keep on pace. So that's 1. I'm going to try and finish off Twisted Hate at least tonight to make it to 2. And depending on how long that takes me, maybe start this. This is going to be a really quick read for me. I might be up late. I've been doing nothing all day except for reading and relaxing and playing Sims. So, you know, what am I, sleepy? No, I'm going to stay up late. I'm going to see if I can polish off Twisted Hate and this book. Let's see if I wake up tomorrow. It's going to be like noon and I'm going to be like, good morning. I actually fell asleep. This is going to be more of like a piecemeal wrap up than a vlog, because I literally haven't done anything but sit here and read. So last night I finished Twisted Hate by Huang, and this is like a 2.5 or a 2 out of 5 stars. This is one of those cases where I think in and of itself it's like fine, more or less. But also it is like aggressively not for me. This is a contemporary enemies to lovers, and I don't tend to like enemies to lovers stories like at the best of times. And in contemporary settings, they particularly just set me off, because the entire basis of why these two grown people are just like really rude and mean to each other is that she overheard him saying something to his sister when they had just met 7 years ago when they were in college, and she's held that grudge for 7 years to the point where they have to make like a truce to work together because they're such enemies that they can't even like work in a professional setting where she's a lawyer and he's a doctor. So like immediately I'm just like, this is so stupid. And the degree to with which they like are mean to each other, it's like banter, but I don't find it entertaining at all. Like the way that they dealt with each other was a lot of like picking on each other, and that just again is not something that I enjoy in real life. I can't be around people who think that being mean to others is like a form of humor or wit, or I just don't like it, and I didn't like it written here in this story. And then so the weird thing about this is that it's almost like dark romance light. This is like an intro to dark romance, in that there is an aspect of their relationship that is like, they call it hate sex, right? But it's like aggressive, almost like BDSM-y, but it's not ever talked about like overtly. They just kind of jump into it where he's like bossing her around and like slightly degrading her. And there's consent in that he's like, do you want this? Is this okay? But there's not like an actual conversation about the kind of relationship and power dynamic that they're exploring. And so that immediately kind of put me off. But as I was reading, I knew in my mind that this was going to be used in the third act breakup, like in the miscommunication. And I knew it was building towards that. And of course, at the end, he weaponizes that power dynamic and their relationship and the way that they have sex in order to break up with her and to have that big blowout in a way that I found truly disgusting. And even though the whole thing is that he's like sorry for it at the end and he wants a second chance and he'll never do it again, the like punishment didn't fit the crime to me. Like I was so soured on this man entirely that I just like at that point I was like, I'm out. I don't care about this anymore. It also was just like a few pages over 500 pages. So again, why? I don't know. It wasn't even like a slow burn either, because this is one of those like enemies to lovers that, like, I don't know, immediately, even though they're like making fun of each other, you can tell that the dynamic is more friendly than that they're putting up. Like, they're obviously like acting out on this in a way that it didn't ring true to me. It felt a little bit hollow. So it didn't feel like a true slow burn. It felt more like they were realizing what we, the audience, knew all along. And so that wasn't enjoyable. I think that there was a portion of the beginning of this that was like readable, and it like kind of hooked me for a little bit, and I was kind of like, okay, I can see why other people who like enemies to lovers might like this, but it lost me in the second half like a lot. So I have to give this like a 2-star. I don't know how I'm going to rank all of these books that are like finalists, because they all are falling in this like, there's like 1 or 2 that I hated, a bunch of these 2 stars, and like 1 so far that I've rated a 3. So how am I going to pick apart like which one's the worst of these? I don't know. Following that, I started last night and finished this morning The Girl Who Soared Over Fairyland and Cut the Moon in Two. And this book is really strange for me, the way that it exists in the series, because it's one of my least favorites. So by that I mean I would give this like a 4 out of 5 stars instead of a 5. But I also have highlighted, I think, the most lines in this one than like in any other one. And it has entire scenes that I am just like wrecked by all of it. So big theme that is explored in the whole Fairyland series as our main character is growing up is friendship and like making friends, but also growing apart from friends, missing friends, and seeing friends change, even if you're not growing apart, but like having to deal with them growing into their own person. And this one is a lot about September growing up, but her friends growing up at the same time and missing them, and then being reunited with them, but then like missing the versions of them that she knew previously. And all of that is just so beautifully explored. Like every time I read certain scenes in here, I'm choked up, I'm having all kinds of feelings, and that was true this time around as well. So even though the plot of this is what kind of weakens it to me, it is so messy. I've read this multiple times and I still couldn't tell you like what exactly happens in this book. The moments and the writing and the lines and the characters are all A+. So yeah, that one is reread and done. And then I started my next Goodreads romance, which is Every Summer After by Carley Fortune. I'm about halfway through, for real. I always say I'm about halfway through, but I looked at it before I started recording, and I'm truly about halfway through. Every Summer After is really, really readable, and this is like one where I can see why people really like this one. Right now, it's like high angst but low stakes. It's a lot of like pining, and there is like a dual timeline sort of thing, so we're flashing forward and back. And so right now the author is dangling the why these two people broke up in the past and now they're like reunited present day. And so I have a feeling that it's making it really readable, because I'm like, come on, what happened? But I have a feeling if that reveal, like, that's going to be make it or break it. If it's too cheap, if it's not big enough to sort of fit all of the angst and like all of the time that we've been spent building to it, that's going to be not as fun. But also if it's too big, if it's too soapy, it's not going to fit the sort of low stakes, you know, quieter sort of romance that this is. So I'm very curious to see like what happened between these two, but it is at least reading very quickly. So yeah, I gotta go back to reading. That was books 23 and 24, and Every Summer After will be 25. So let's go. Okay, so let's wrap this up. So I finished reading Every Summer After, and kind of echoing what I already said, I understand more of why this one was sort of addictive and popular. It feels very much like a beach read. The thing that we find out about why these two people are no longer together felt like it fit the story. It was a plot thing that I personally really don't enjoy to see in fiction. It's not supposed to be like something you enjoy seeing. It is the reason that a couple of relationships break. And so it is effective in that way. It's hard not to think about my experience reading this just sort of in comparison to all of the rest of the finalists. And this is going to be pretty high on that list, because even though I don't think that it is necessarily like best of the year caliber, it was so much more easy to read than some of the other things that are on this list. The writing was a little bit simplistic, but I think that it did effectively use the flash forwards and flashbacks. I did find it a little bit uncomfortable the way that we kind of focused in on the sexual relationship between our two main characters when they were minors. I don't think we ever see like full-on intercourse, but it had a number of like scenes that were sex focused, and I'm not somebody who says that sex can't be in YA, but this wasn't YA, it was an adult book, and it was using flashbacks to them when they were minors to really set up the chemistry, especially the sexual chemistry between these two characters, and that personally made me a little bit uncomfortable. Also, kind of par for the course in terms of like a story like this is that like, right, it has a happily ever after, so people are forgiven, we move on, but I feel like the book and the characters were ready to move on before I was. So overall, it was just kind of like middling to fine. I would give this like a 3-star, maybe a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Not one I would super easily recommend because it is that like high angst, low stakes sort of combination. So you really have to be in the mood for just a lot of people in their feelings. And if that is not for you, this book will also not be for you. After I finished reading that, I had a moment where I was like, if I really want to take full advantage of like what I'm trying to accomplish, there were other books that I could have picked up, but I really just wanted to read Jackal. So I read between last night and this morning Jackal. The only reason truly that I had to just finish it this morning is because and it wasn't like a spooky sort of thing, because even though this has, like, I didn't find this scary. It was spooky and eerie in a way that was stressful to me. And so last night I hit the point where things were like falling apart and we were coming to the climax, and I had to take a step away because I was more stressed than anything else. I really liked this and I appreciated the project of this a lot. I think that it is overt in what it is saying about the treatment of Black women, and we see a lot of frustration in terms of like nobody believing the mothers of these girls who are going missing in the woods, even though it is happening year after year. We see a lot of racism and a lot of microaggressions because it is also a small town that is primarily white, and so all of that really comes together to paint this portrait of how Black women can be treated by society. And again, it very overtly says these things, and there are like so many lines about the way that Black women are sort of treasured in some ways and forgotten and thrown away in others. That made this one of those reading experiences where it just like, you know, is reflecting back at me some of my experience, and it had my heart in my throat for a lot of it. I really liked the setup of the plot and how that sort of progressed until the very end. I think it gave me a little bit of vibes of Mexican Gothic, where I had a similar experience where the first half, where when we don't know what's going on, was so much better, but when we start getting explanation, it kind of loses me and it becomes a little bit too, like, I don't know, the grounding in reality makes the story lose a little bit of its luster. And that happened to me here, particularly because this is like, because it was so overt in its sort of messaging, there was still that like spooky air of like what's in the woods. But when it goes straight into like the fantastical and the woo-woo, it lost me a little bit in that regard. It felt like a piece of the story that didn't quite fit with everything else that had come. So the ending did lose me a little bit, but overall I still appreciated the project of this and the writing and the observational wit of it all as well. This is going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to crack my top 10. It may end up in my top 20. This one's weird because when I read books in December, I'm always thinking about like recency bias. And if there are any books that I'm like, yep, best of the year because they're fresh. But I think that this is the opposite, where had I read this earlier in the year, like I could better understand how much this is going to stay with me. And I would have more time to sort of parse out my feelings and my experience of this. But I don't have that time. It's the end of the year. So I feel like, I don't know, there is a piece of this that's kind of missing for me in the equation of like, how good is this actually compared to other things that I have read this year? But that said, I still think that this is a worthwhile project. Even if you don't end up liking the story itself, the plot itself, I think that there is something here in terms of what the author has done, especially for a debut author. I would give this 4, maybe 4.5 out of 5 stars. After I finished reading this morning, I had my come to Jesus moment, which I knew maybe today on Saturday, I would have my come to Jesus moment of like, okay, you need to like head to graphic novels or novellas or something like that, because there's no way I was going to read 4 full-length novels or finish, because I'm in the middle of a bunch of them, like Reminders of Him and Thistlefoot and Woman Eating. So there were a bunch of things that I could finish off, but none of them called to me. And so I wanted to balance like actually reading things I wanted to read and striving to get this done. At one point I was like, it's fine if I don't, like 26 books for the month is still a wonderful accomplishment. And then I remembered that I had a bunch of novellas on my TBR, and they are part of the Wayward children's series. Earlier this year, I bought all of the Wayward children's series books that I had not read yet. I'd only read the first one, Every Heart a Doorway, and not the most recent one now, but the most recent one at the time was nominated for a Hugo, and I was trying to read all of the Hugo nominated novels and novellas. So my thought was that I was going to catch up before I read that one, and I didn't end up doing that. I ended up rereading Every Heart a Doorway, but I never got to all of these, so they went to my TBR shelf. So I was like, wait, I can get some stuff off my TBR shelf. There are things that I bought this year that I would love to get read for the accomplishment of like actually buying and reading things. And so yeah, I read 4 novellas in the Wayward children's series today. I find these really solid. I love portal fantasies and I love fairy tales, so there is a lot here in the premise and the ideas that just ticks a lot of boxes for me. And I love fairy tales and fantasies that have a darker edge, that explore sort of the darker edge of what it means for a child to be taken away to these fantastical places. And that's really the whole premise of this series, so it works for me on that level. I really enjoy the writing here and the way that the voice of the narrator takes on that air of fairy tales. I think what stops these from being super great for me is that novellas are really difficult to, I think, accomplish. And so there always is like something in these books that I think either gets away from McGuire plot-wise or goes so quickly, especially at the end. I feel like often at the end we're either like speeding through or just like kind of going through all of these motions of a bunch of stuff that I'm like, wait. And so it kind of always loses me on that part, but I did enjoy this overall. I find like with a lot of like novella collections like this, that something about like the cumulative experience of them all is also really nice, but each individual book I would rate like 3.5 out of 5 stars. I love reading about Jack and Jill, and I enjoyed Beneath the Sugar Sky because of the continuity of like picking up where the first book left off and getting the gang back together. I didn't enjoy Lundy's book as much, but that was purely enjoyment. I would still rate that like a 3 out of 5 stars. So yeah, 4 novellas read off my TBR shelf, and these are books 27, 28, 29, and 30. Woo! She did it. Your girl did it. We did have to sneak in some novellas there at the end, but I'm super proud of that accomplishment. I will be wrapping up my year of reading for you guys. So stats, a top 10 here on YouTube. My patrons will get my top 11 through 20 as a bonus as well. And then my bottom 10 least favorite of the year on this channel as well. So I'm super excited to do my end of the year wrap up stuff. I know this has been happening already for weeks on BookTube, but I'm a December 31st bitch. Like I am reading until the last possible moment. And look, like something might crack my top 20 from like the book that I read on December 31st. So that's why I don't count myself out. I know that this turned more into a wrap up than a reading vlog, but honestly, all I have been doing is like chugging reading. So if you have read or would like to read any of the books that I've mentioned, let's chat down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy New Year, and I will see you guys soon.